My guest today is Denisha Tate-McAlister. I met Denisha in 2019 at a state conference for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Wisconsin. It was there Denisha demonstrated firsthand her passion for servant leadership. Denisha is all about leading leaders. She's been doing leadership since she was young, and she's earned notoriety and accolades for her work across the country. She now runs her own consulting business, leading leaders and being the change agent necessary for the good of our communities. Talking with Denisha opened my eyes to how connecting who you are to where you've been is vital to understanding where you want to go and how you plan to get there. There is wisdom to listen to and lessons to learn from in this episode with Denisha. Find your catalyst here. Thank you. All right, we're live. So, Denisha, welcome to the Catalyst podcast. Um, I'm really excited for this. I've been looking forward to getting you on here. I think I reached out to you about a month ago about coming on, but since I started this podcast, you're one of those people that I've been wanting to have on since the beginning, and so it's just a matter of probably timing on my end, and just honestly just reaching out to you. Let's be real. I just gotta send an email, and then here we are. So, but welcome. Seriously, I'm so excited. I want to share you with the world in another format. I know you're already out there. I don't need to do much for you in terms of reaching out more. You've been everywhere across the country and in Milwaukee, um, but I'm excited for this. So again, welcome.
Thank you.
So why don't we just kick this off? I just want to get to know Denisha. I might know a lot about you already, but who is Denisha Tate-McAlister?
Yes. First of all, thank you for having me. When I got your email, it was absolutely an honor. I was super excited. And I'm like, yes, we'll have a conversation about whatever. No, this is really great. And congratulations on a successful podcast as well.
Thank you. Yeah, when I sent you this, I thought to myself, it's really an honor and a privilege to have you on here because I don't know if I'm doing this podcast without people like you having come into my life. Really reassuring me that yes, you have the it factor for what it is that I'm trying to do. So it's really a privilege for me to have you on because there's several people that I'm going to have on that I can attribute this success and other areas of my life of success to folks like you. So thank you.
So thank you. Now I'll stop blushing. Um, so great question. Who is Denisha Tate McAllister? Constantly evolving is one thing that's important to know, but I am a very simple person, born and raised in the city of Chicago by a single mom, the oldest of four. And early on, I was introduced to the concept of leader. Now, I'll be honest, it wasn't those words. It was more of, wow, she's bossy, or things like, of course, she has an opinion about something, or just the room pausing because there was one more input that was needed, mine, of course. Um, and so the truth is, I have been me my entire life. And I know it's like, well, what do you mean by that? The adult personality that I have, the way I show up, my presence, that little being really surfaced at about age 2 or 3. She was bold. She was opinionated. She loved everybody and wanted everybody to be happy. And so, whereas she did early on seem a little bossy, quite had this opinion about most things, it was rooted in a desire to make sure that everybody she came in contact with was okay. It was really about that. And I have not changed from being that person. My realm of the everybody that I want to be okay has grown because, at 2 or 3, it was where my mom took me. Now at this age, the world is my oyster. So I am still me. I am still the leader that I believe I was born and purposed to be.
Yeah, that's amazing. One of the things that, as I was reviewing like the notes prepping, was how you knew you were a leader at a young age. And I'm curious, you talked about your environment growing up, but what was it? I do believe that some people are just born leaders, right? Just how some people are born naturally talented in athletics, right?
Right.
But I think with both things, I like to use this metaphor with folks is that you can be born, with the skill sets and attitudes and whatnot, and then there's a certain level of talent that gets you to a spot, and then you can work past it, right? That's why they always say hard work will outwork talent any day of the week.
Yes.
But you clearly were someone that was a leader at an extremely young age, and you knew it. What made that happen?
It had everything to do with environment and opportunity. So, one of the benefits of being the oldest with a single mom is that it was the two of us for a minute. It was, before any of the other kids came along, it was just the two of us. And my mom was 18 when she had me. And therefore, I grew and learned with this 18-year-old who was growing and learning. And so, as she continued to evolve and develop, she brought me along. And, yes, I was her daughter, but she early on saw skills in me. For example, my mom always talked about that when she was growing up, a child had its place, and you don't speak until you're spoken to, and you don't ask questions. You just sit. She hated it. She thought that was just sheer torture. So she told herself, when I have children, I'm never going to silence them. I'm going to insist that they ask questions. I'm going to let them be seen and heard and encourage it. So here you go. You got this 2-year-old who already has the I'm a leader, I love people world, look out, here I come, with now a parent who says, yes, let's do it, let's go. And so even our morning routine was a rundown of our day.
Yeah.
Here's what we're going to do. And so what do you want to do today? So at 3, I was allowed to figure out what I wanted to do on the day. I already was being taught to make a decision and be okay with it. So, the early rundown was to play with certain dolls and to probably put on the socks with the polka dots but nonetheless, it was early onset of me having agent.
Yeah.
Knowing that I have authority over a domain. Now, it was small. It was my bedroom, my toy box, and what I could take to my grandma's house as my mom went to work. But I had that agent early on. So the environment she created allowed the leadership in me to bloom.
Yeah. I think there's some huge lessons to take away from that, right? I think that having a space to command leadership over, to be able to make decisions, yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, or I see a lot of people struggle with, and I see a lot of people have mastered it. And I think sometimes, especially, I think the older you get, like you talked about, that domain grows bigger, and the more you can start at a younger age to develop that agency and that control over your environment, then as you grow and evolve, that skill set will also evolve. Whereas if you don't have that opportunity at a younger age, your environment gets bigger and bigger and bigger, but your skill sets, your leadership, your command over yourself and your environment, it doesn't.
Yes,
So you found a way to
absolutely.
master that at a young age, and clearly that's gotten you to a place. And I know we'll get into where you've been and what you're doing now, but without question, that accelerated your ability to accomplish things a lot faster, and your trajectory was probably much higher than someone that may have not had that parent that was encouraging, or had
Absolutely.
that environment that allowed for opportunities.
Absolutely. And it's truly, it has nothing to do with me. It's all about what she wanted because of what she didn't have. And so that's definitely a lesson for a parent of today. Allow your child's authority and agent to bloom as early as possible. And it's simple things like your room is your domain, keep it clean, put your toys away. Now, truth be told, toys away in the toy box, toys away in the closet, who cares? We just don't want them in the middle of the floor.
Yeah.
There are some choices that are there that you should allow them to make. You're going outside, you need on socks. Polka dots, striped, red, blue. Does it really matter? No. So give that sense of agency in an area that's, safe. You don't allow them to drive the car, but allow that leadership to grow because it becomes second nature. And then they show up that way, whether they want to or not, because it's kind of who they are.
Yeah. We'll definitely, you'll notice, we'll just kind of go off. When I hear items like this in our conversation, I'm just going to go down some rabbit holes and then we'll come back. So kind of getting back to, what you just said, how to be able to access that control and develop yourself, you know, having it at a younger age is going to allow you to probably be a more developed leader, like we talked about, as you evolve, it evolves with it. But thinking about like that individual that's high school, college, professional, it could be 20s, 30s, 40s, people that haven't really tapped into that space yet. How does someone do that, especially if they didn't have those opportunities early on? Because I know a lot of people that are, that I work alongside, that I work with in the Boys and Girls Clubs, and just, friends who they have it, but they don't have the space to do it. Or they do have the space and they don't know what to do. So what does somebody do to figure out, how do I become this leader, not
Yeah.
just at work or in the family, but a leader of themselves? Because I think that's where it really starts, right?
And that is exactly the answer. You start with self. You see, leadership has two parts. There is a doing of leading. And so someone could very well say, well, I have it, I want it, but I don't have the opportunity to do. So if you find yourself in that, then create it. So let's see. I start by making sure that I understand the skills of a leader. Then that's how I do. So decision making. If I want to work on being a leader, how am I making decisions? And let's start simple. Deciding where we're going to eat. Nothing worse than going out to dinner with 4 people and nobody will decide where you're going to eat. You spend 25 minutes. Do we want pizza? No, I don't really want pizza. Okay, do you want to go get burgers? I don't really want burgers. I was on a diet. Stop. There's an opportunity. We all have that opportunity at least once a month. Yeah. But start looking for opportunities to make decisions. Second, decide what type of leader you want to be. I'm a servant leader. The point of my leadership is not just to get to point A or B. It is for me to help others get there. And that's my leadership style. So I'm constantly looking for ways to help people, because in them allowing me to help them, they're technically following. Mm-hmm. I'm saying go this way. And then guess what? They go that way. Get your hands dirty. Get in there. Don't wait till you have a team. It's one. Who's somebody that is potentially struggling with something that you already have mastered, you're good at, you can conquer. Those are opportunities to lead. A leader is a coach. Who are you sharing wisdom with? Who are you coaching? Who are you taking time out of your life and giving them the gift of that time and your learned experience? So when you talk about how do I build leadership opportunities, it is look at engaging the skills of leadership, and that's where you'll find yourself in that space. Then once you've gotten the confidence, you're like, oh, okay, I think I'm okay at this. Now take it somewhere. Take it on the road. Take it to your workplace. If there isn't a volunteer opportunity that presents itself, create it. Because leaders have the ability to assess. You assess opportunities for improvement. You assess opportunities for efficiency. That's what you're leading towards. So now you're in an environment saying, the way we do timesheets is monotonous, and I hate every other Friday. I bet if we did it this way, it could be. Now you're innovating, another leadership skill. You're boldly presenting, another leadership skill. And once it's accepted, and the first time you come up with something, they'll be like, no, it's fine. But don't stop. There's always opportunities for improvement all around you. So now you have something and they go, that's a good idea. Don't give them the idea and walk away. That's where we mess up. Say, you know what? I'm happy you said that. I'd like to lead us executing this. Trust me, if a team member comes to me with a great idea, and they want to carry it out, that's a win-win. Have at it, because I'm not looking for more work to do.
Yep.
but but
Yep.
but that's where we go wrong. Sometimes we have these brilliant ideas, and they're great, but then you're like, okay, thank you for liking my idea, and then they're executing and you're gone. No, create your leadership opportunities, because that boldness of leadership is what you're going to need to be a good leader.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When you think about, just taking extreme ownership. I don't know if you've heard that term, right? There's a guy I listen to a lot, Jocko Willink, he talks about it, but it's that idea, like if you have an idea, we'll find a way to do the idea, right?
Yeah.
Take that leadership, take that ownership. And I think, everything you're talking about is it leadership, ownership, responsibility. It ties in a lot of unique ways, but yeah, an individual really has to get a grip on, who they are, where they're at, where they want to be in order for them to really be able to take ownership, right? Because if you're just trying to become a leader, it's a very vague idea. But you talk about servant leadership. Who are you as a person, and what does that mean for the type of leadership that you will excel in? Because the
Mhm.
reality is not everyone's going to be, the CEO of an organization. Or like when I think of this, I always think boys and girls clubs, right?
Mhm.
Some people are better fitted for that front seat as
Yes.
CEO. Some people are better fitted for director, operations, or
Yes.
financial pieces of the organization. But you really got to own what it is that gets you excited, own what it is that you want to do, and
Yes.
ultimately that idea of control what you can control, right? And everything you can't, just build yourself up strong enough in the areas you can control to do something about it, right?
Exactly. And we have to understand that leadership is not a role title. It's a doing, it's a being. So for example, when I think about my professional career, before I became a consultant, in my professional career, I have never been the executive director, because that was not my desire. Not because I didn't have the skill set, and definitely not because the opportunity didn't present itself every week in a phone call. But I knew that my gift and assignment was helping leaders take their big idea to the ultimate level. So I told people all the time, I am an amazing number two. I want to be in that second seat, because I realized that I had the gift of translation. I could sit in a board meeting, I could sit with an executive director, a president, but I could also then go to the troops, those on the ground who were going to carry it out. And I knew how to speak the language of every level. I knew how to sit and understand the vision, but also how to create the step-by-step plan so that everybody knew what to do on Tuesday.
Yeah.
That ability to go up and down the chain of activity was my superpower. So sitting in the seat as the executive director, that wasn't my role. That wasn't how I was going to achieve the big, because I not only wanted to be a part of the vision, I wanted to be a part of getting it done. And so knowing who you are as a leader is very important, to your point, because it's not chasing a title or a seat on an org chart, because we lead from all components of the machine. And you got to get comfortable with that.
Yeah. Yeah, leadership at every level, right? And I know we have a mutual contact, someone that was your mentor, I think still is your mentor this day, John Miller, with the
Absolutely.
Boys and Girls Clubs. I sat down with him. That would have been, I think, fall of 2019. I took 30 minutes, just to talk to him, just to, just like this, learn from him, learn about what makes you tick, and what can I learn from that. But one of the things that has sat with me, and I think about it every day, is it's not about title, it's about function. What function are you playing to get, your organization from point A to point B,
Mhm.
efficiently, effectively, making impact, especially obviously with Boys and Girls Clubs. But it wasn't just like the function of, what role you play in your organization. It was the function that you play in your own life, right? Are you leading your life, or are you just flying by the seat of your pants? Are you taking an active role in your family? Like for me, am I being that active father with my son and being that active husband with my wife? Am I playing the function necessary in order to have the success that I'm looking for and to achieve the goals I am? So I'm assuming, he taught me that in a 30-minute conversation. And I know for years, I can probably guess that John has, mentioned that on a few occasions, that it's about the function you play, not the title you hold. Because if you're trying to make a difference, at the end of the day, no one's really going to care about a title. It's
Absolutely.
about, did you make it happen, right?
Absolutely. And that, when I talk to people about leadership, and whereas, yes, at 2, I knew I was a leader, but there was an evolution of my understanding of the difference between leadership being something I do, and in the beginning, it was a 9 to 5. I go to work and I lead because I had a position that was leadership. And so I go to work and I lead. But over time, I realized, and I have a kind of funny story to tell you, that it's not just what I do, it's who I am. I show up in every space as a leader. Now, I have the wisdom to know whether it's appropriate to, in this space, just lead myself or jump in and take a bigger role. But it's not something that you cut off. Those skill sets stay on because it's who I am. It's not just what I do. So, an example, my mom and I years ago went to a concert, super excited about this jazz concert. And at the end, they were having an autograph signing party. And so in the loft of the theater, they set up this long, narrow hallway where at the end there was a set of tables and then the rest was just loft space. So the artists were going to be at the table and you'll go up, you'll get your whatever that you bought signed and go. So we get up there and there's only maybe 5, 6 people. And then the table is set up. And immediately I'm thinking, this is going to be chaotic because there was no obvious flow of how it was going to work. You knew there was a table, but the rest was just sheer open space. And I'm like, yeah, we're not going to do this. So, of course, I look at my mom and I'm like, I'll be back. And she's laughing. She knows her daughter. She knows I'm about to go into action. So I see this couple and I say, hey, they're going to start the autographing soon. So why don't you guys go right over here against the wall? You're going to be the front of the line. And they say, oh, okay. So they go, they're up the front. And then I see 2 security guards and I say, excuse me, do you guys have the velvet ropes, the way to section off things? And they're like, yeah. I was like, well, you need 2. You need to bring 2 up here because you have your table set up, but the ropes aren't set up. They're like, oh, okay. They go and they get the rope. So now they have the velvet ropes. And I look at one of the other guys who didn't go get the rope. I said, hey, this is probably where people should come up. Since they're signing there, they should go down that way. So it's so much easier for you all to control the crowd. And he says, yeah, good idea. So he tells some other people something, they get to moving. And so fast forward, we're in the parking lot, walking to the car. And my mom and I, we see the couple who was at the front of the line. And they're like, oh, you're off work? I am thoroughly confused. Me? Yeah, you're off work now. And I was like, I don't work here. They said, what? I said, oh no, it was just about to be chaotic. I don't like chaos. And I just refuse to be engaged in things that are unnecessarily difficult. So I was just helping to, and my mom is laughing and the people are just mouth open, amazed. Because to me, it was normal for me to jump in and fix that. Like what leader would sit in a space and see chaos coming and just let it come? I'm not that person, not that hardwiring. I can't cut it off. Now, I'm not going to walk into the cockpit of the plane, but I do know where there's a realm where my authority makes sense. Why would I let everybody struggle? It was so much more efficient. Let's get it going. That's the difference between doing and being.
Yeah. Yeah, because you could easily just sat back and you looked at the whole space and said, oh, this isn't going to work, that's going to work. And that's it, right? And
Right.
you could have had a conversation, been like, hey, I don't know about this. But that's the difference between, anyone can say anything, right? You can identify, you can say, okay, hey, this is that, this isn't going to work. But it's that, what's the next step, right? It's, okay, this is what's wrong, but this is what we're going to do about it.
Absolutely.
That's a huge hurdle that I see a lot of developing leaders. That's always the goal, is how do you get the idea into action? That's always the key. Because again, a lot of people, I don't want to butcher the quote, but smart people know what to say, wise people know when to say it. But I also want to, like, I say that knowing that I think smart people, anyone can really see like most issues, right? I mean, depending on what it is, maybe you got to have a background and a trained eye, but there's a difference between knowing and being able to do something about it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's that difference between being smart about something, being wise about something. And I think a lot of that though comes from experience. And I think I could probably even tie that back to your young life, in your childhood, how you had these opportunities to develop in leadership. And
Yes.
as you grew up, when the opportunities were there, it's just like, yeah, this is Denisha's wheelhouse. I can look at this situation, from the 30,000-foot view. This is your goal. This is where you're at. This is why you're not going to get there, and this is what we're going to do to make sure that this signing goes just right. And you're not even a part of it.
Right.
You just see it. It's like, oof. All right, let's do something about this. Let me help you out. Now I'm going to get out of here. Right. But it's
Absolutely.
amazing because that story is kind of like a metaphor for what you've done throughout your whole career. Right.
It is. It is who I am and how I show up in the world. I take very seriously that my assignment is to make life better and easier for everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it's not a burden, it's actually a joy. Because to see the people coming out and they're all laughing and happy, that means that session, that autograph session, went real easy.
Yeah.
They're not coming out looking stressed and hot because they were standing in line too long. I mean, you know what I mean? And so when you do show up completing your assignment, you get fed from it. So talk about you getting something out of the podcast. Yes, because it's your assignment. It is your assignment to bring to the surface and spread to the masses wisdom and experience of others.
Yeah.
And so it's not a burden for you. You're like, yeah, I want to do this and I can't wait till the next one. And that's what it is. And that has been the privilege of my life, that I've been allowed to lead and allowed to honestly develop the mastery level of leadership, in that I am confident in leading, I am bold in leading, but I am also influential. People believe my leadership when I say hello. There is a trust that arrives with me. And I think it's because I, with every source of my being, only want people to be better. And I think that's what I lead with. And that people are like, yeah, I want to be better. Go for it. How are we going to do this?
Yeah. So I kind of want to get into your story because I know as we talk, I'm sure we'll talk about leadership throughout this whole deal. But obviously, young, you knew you were a leader through your childhood. Obviously, you're helping out, these signings that aren't even yours. When was it that you realized that this is going to be your career? And what did those first opportunities look like to really get a sense of whether or not this thing was actually going to work from a career standpoint?
That's such an awesome question. So early on in my career, I knew I wanted to be in the helping profession. I don't know that I knew leading and leadership where that sat in there. So when I graduated from college, well, when I was in college, I decided I wanted to be a psychologist. I wanted to work with children specifically. Um, but there was this emotional tie that I had to children. To be honest, that wouldn't have been healthy. I felt too much ownership over their pain, over their, so having the opportunity to have a practicum, I learned, and it was reaffirmed by an instructor, that you don't separate properly. And that's not going to be healthy for you. You can't take this home with you every day. That's not how you help people. You'll burn out too fast. So, okay, great. I'm not going to be a psychiatrist. What do I do? Oh, I know. I'll be a social worker. I mean, with the classes I've had, it all kind of lines up as if that somehow was going to be different. And it was in that, though, that I experienced structures that were not in alignment with my value system. I experienced leaders that were not anything I wanted to ever be. So I started seeing that leadership mattered. So then from there, I have 3 or 4 other jobs, of all are which just not working, not fitting, but they're all giving me exposure to leadership and the significance of leadership in making things occur. And that's what put me on the path. So it was honestly when I started at the Boys and Girls Club. It was 1997 when I understood that I was to be a leader if I wanted the world to be the place that I thought it should be. And my focus at that time was really about life being better for children. That was my path of different jobs was still all around that. And it was in that I started supervising others. And it was through the supervising others that all of those skill sets and experiences and hardwiring all finally just like, when you're putting something together and that last piece clicks and you're like, yeah, that's what happened for me. It clicked. I clicked. Yeah. And that put me on the trajectory. And our beloved friend, mentor, John Miller, met with him in 1997. And he saw in me what I am now, even though I didn't know this was in there. And he said, you have to have a mentor. You have to have someone who can open doors, who have been where you want to go, and who can champion you even when you're not in the room. And I said, awesome. So at the end of this 30-minute consultation, I say, great. He says, okay, you got your to-do list? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, so you're going to read this and go do that and get a mentor? I was like, oh, that was already done. And he says, how is that possible? Like I just told you, and you've still been sitting here. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're going to be my mentor. And he says, no, you have to get a mentor. And I said, you. And he says, that's not how it works. I was like, why not? He says, I said, listen, if you have been given the authority to sit and tell people how to do, what to do, when to do, so that they can be successful, why would I want to look for somebody else to mentor me? Clearly, you've got what it takes. Yeah. He laughed, and the rest was history.
Yeah, I remember when you shared that story with me, and I love it because in that, right, so there's mentorship, and I wrote that down because that's definitely something that I think is crucial for anyone. Like you said, if you want to move somewhere, right, point A to point B, find someone that knows that point B, been that point B, can open doors to point B. But what I loved about that story is how with John, he was just like, when you said it's him, he's just like, well, no, that's not how this works. And you're like, well, why not? That's that curiosity, that willingness to question and be bold to ask questions like, well, why not? Right. You talked about, with your mom growing up, she never wanted to take that curiosity and squash it. Right. If it didn't make sense, ask why. Right. Like,
yes,
why not? And so that's just beautiful how that story, again, you can tie that back to your childhood and that environment you grew up in, and then the place that you wanted to put yourself into and how you led yourself. Because I, without question, I mean, I know your story enough to know that you're not in a majority, so to speak, for making the accomplishments you have. I mean, you're really a unique, dynamic individual that really blaze your own path with the support of others and mentors, but you made it happen. And that's something that's so significant that I think that's what I want people to also learn about you, is that you really did life on your own terms and continue to do it on your own terms.
And you know what? That too can be traced back to my childhood. So in that incredible environment that built that space for leadership, that allowed me to blossom, to bloom, in that same environment was an adult who was struggling. She was struggling and unfortunately had a period of drug use. had a period of being emotionally lost, had a period of absolute self-destruction. At that point, it's 4 kids now. So my first leading a group was me leading siblings because I didn't want the foster system to take us because she couldn't take us.
Yeah.
And so the blessing in all of that was I learned adversity early on. I experienced struggle early on. I wouldn't change a thing though, because those experiences allow this boldness that you see, this questioning, this, I get to decide. That's what came out of all of that. I can remember one day, it was a nice day outside. And I'm like, oh, do I want to go outside or what do I need to do? I distinctly remember saying, I have to do my homework before the sun goes down because I don't think we pay the electric bill and they're probably going to cut the lights off. Leaders have to sacrifice and have their priorities in order. That adversity gave me early experience of knowing, get it together, make the right decision. You will have to deal with the consequences. It wasn't about, I'm mad that she didn't pay the bill. Like that never occurred to me, to be honest. It was, here is the reality. I have my list of it is what it is. Okay, I got it. What kind of decisions are you going to make based upon that? So again, my childhood created a foundation to allow everything that you see before you.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to say about that, the struggle. I think there's not one successful person I have ever met that did not have a story at some point of struggle. I think that the individuals I talk to that don't seem to have a lot of struggle, those aren't individuals that I see that are leading, that are advancing, that are innovating. Those are the ones that are kind of, they're keeping status quo because that's what's comfortable. And being comfortable, man, that can be one of the most dangerous things in the world.
It can.
I'd rather be busy than bored, right? And boredom, I think I got a staff that says this all the time. And I relate it not just to kids, but to anyone, but she always says bored kids make poor decisions. I think bored anyone gives an opportunity to make poor decisions.
Absolutely.
When you start to live life in a way where it's like, hey, you need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable because that's where the growth happens. That's where you find out more about yourself and what you're really about. And sometimes, yeah, life is going to show you like, oh, you got some work to do. You got some real gaps in your game. But you got 2 options, right? You can either wallow in that and be like, you know what, I'm just not it. Or you look at it and you say, okay, what is this? What can I do about it? Is it something that I can get better at, right? Is it something that maybe I have to think about delegating in terms of whether you're on a team or maybe do you need to outsource some support, get that mentor to help guide you through it? There's a choice of what are you actually going to do? Because you don't always necessarily, I'm not going to be the fastest man in the world, but I can definitely work on different elements of my physical well-being to be a better athlete as a whole, right? There's just guys that play sports or people that are in business. They may be one of the most decorated, financial people. Doesn't mean that you put them in a room to do program planning, right? You got to know what you're good at. And if you are going to be a CEO or if you're going to be a leader where there's a lot of dynamic skill sets, sometimes again, you got to figure out, okay, what can I actually do to develop that skill set and or delegate or find a way to, take your strengths and grow them so large that those weaknesses, they can't impact because you've done such a good job in other areas that, yeah, you may still not be the greatest, but in those strengths and the development there and in working with other people, you're going to find ways to fill the gaps. It doesn't always have to be you, but as long as you do something about it, that's what matters.
Absolutely. And something you said that is so important in there is we have to be honest with ourselves. There's the you that shows up in front of everybody, and then there's the you that you see. And I'll be honest, that was a big issue area for me. So although I was a leader, I was award winning. But when I tell you inside, I had this imposter syndrome because I didn't think I was worth it. I knew I had the skill set, never questioned that. I knew I was good at what I did. I just had this concept of, but am I good enough for this assignment, for this role? Like somebody would say, "Oh my goodness, you were amazing." And it would almost be painful to accept such a compliment. Well, it was all right. I mean, I'm happy you got something out of it. I wasn't really on my A game. Like I would literally be backpedaling from accolades. The danger in that, if left unaddressed, you will self-sabotage because you will insist on showing up at the capacity you're comfortable. So if you're not comfortable with the greatness that other people see, you will start scaling back because where are you? Okay, I'm comfortable right here. I'm comfortable being all right. There are people who have leadership gifts that are above and beyond anybody else on the team. But because they don't see themselves as such, they're not comfortable owning that. They'll never volunteer. They'll never go to the front of the line. And even when opportunities are dropped in their lap, they will either ruin it or reject it. And so part of leadership is your mind. And when I talk about leading yourself, it's that kind of stuff. Like, how are you controlling your dialogue? How are you feeding your wellness? How are you making sure that you're being taken care of and that your motive is always right?
Yeah.
That's key.
Yeah, for sure. It's, what are you consuming, right? If you want your body to feel healthy or to feel good, put good things in. And same with your mind, right? What are you telling yourself? What are you taking from that like feedback from other folks? Sometimes when I ask for feedback, I want everything, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. You know, what are you going to prioritize in that feedback? Are you going to focus on, objectively balancing the good and the bad, or are you going to hear that bad stuff, knowing that, hey, you did great, you're great at this, great at that, but that one bad thing, you're just going to let it sit and you're going to fester, right? You have a choice as a person as to what you consume in all ways, right? And that biological form, the psychological form, the sociological form. Who are you with? What are you talking about? What are you prioritizing in your life? Are you reflecting? Are you journaling? Do you see a counselor? There's so many examples of what you can do to make sure. And I think that dialogue with yourself is one of the most significant pieces, I think, of human experience. um, because at the end of the day, you're all you really got. You know, when I turn off this podcast, it's just going to be me, and I'm going to have an opportunity to think about this, and I can either think to myself, okay, that went great, that went poorly, or I can just like whatever the thought patterns are, that's my choice. You can
Yes.
you can train that, right? You can
Mhm.
train that ability to look at something objectively without that emotional sway, to understand, okay, what is it that I'm trying to accomplish, or did this go well? And that imposter syndrome, that's something that I have felt that many times over. I've done, it's been a couple of years since I really felt it in the ways that I was, but I was kind of coming up as this leader in the boys and girls clubs. And I kind of thought to myself, I'm like, me? Like, no, this can't actually be happening. Like, something is going to happen that's going to screw this whole thing up. And I was just like, you know what? I was doing these things with fundraising, and I'd never done fundraising, and I hit some serious goals. I did some really amazing things for our organization that we hadn't done before. Doing things at the club level.
Mhm.
Revitalizing a club that needed it.
Right.
The things we did at one of these club sites was just beyond awesome in 3 years. But even at the end of it, I looked at it and I told myself, I wouldn't give myself the credit. I would give my team all the credit in the world. And I would talk about it with confidence, like, yeah, this is what we did, this is what we did, this is how we did it. But I still didn't feel like it was me. I was like, I got lucky. This is
Right.
just something that's happening because right place, right time, and could have happened to anyone, and it's definitely not me. But you start to realize that you're just full of crap yourself. It's
Yes.
not, it is you. You did accomplish that.
Yes.
And you got to be very, you know, the feedback you give yourself. If
Hmm.
you're not on top of that, you can set yourself self off in a direction where self sabotage, and you can become that self fulfilling prophecy of,
Right.
I don't deserve this, and then boom, and
Yeah.
then you do screw up, and then everything you've worked for, restart, or you step back, like you said, you could backpedal yourself, knowing that you're an amazing leader, you did this great presentation, or you made this program that's phenomenal, but yet you can still
Yes.
say no. It was by happenstance, and then you set yourself
Right.
up for just, it's not fair to yourself. It's really not fair to yourself to do
And the work that has to be done is find the origin of that.
that. Yeah.
Like, why? What is it in you that makes you think you're less than? Trace it. Because what you will find is you will be able to trace it if you really put in the work, figuring out, well, have I always felt that way? Well, in this situation, that situation, okay, what's consistent about that? And then really start going back in time. It is usually something that occurred in the early parts of your life. It is something that was said. It is a relationship that was not healthy. It is a situation that occurred to you, or a moment in time that you processed at your 5, 6-year-old brain, and this is where you landed. For me, doing the work, I had to realize that mine was tied to what I thought my dad thought of me. Because for him to be absent told me I wasn't worth it. And that little feeling that was built in a 5-year-old sitting on the porch with her bag, waiting on him to come pick her up for the weekend visit, that never happened. For her being at the dance recital, looking in the audience, the empty chair that stayed empty because he never showed up, that was a message. You're not worth it. You're not good enough. I had to do the work, one, to figure out that that's where that originated from. And then I had to have a conversation with him. Now, I was fortunate in that we were able to have the conversation, but we had it 30 days before he died. But we had it. And in that, my adult, more mature self heard him say, I loved you more than life itself. I was embarrassed to show up the way I was. I was disappointed in myself that I couldn't take you on a weekend visit to a place that you deserve to be in. So it had nothing to do with me, except for the fact that he so wanted to impress me. He so wanted to show up as my superhero. All of those things caused him to make the decisions that he made, and I didn't know. I heard the exact opposite, but I was fortunate enough for that conversation to happen, for us to then reconcile, and for me to finally, once and for all, quiet that voice. And here's what's crazy. At the time, job-wise, I was the COO of a company. I had not gotten my new business cards yet. True story. My supervisor said, why are you still walking around with business cards that say vice president? That's not your role anymore. When are you going to get your new cards? Like, that's the ultimate. They're going to find out. Oh, I'm not worth it. One of the things I did after my conversation with him is I ordered my business cards. because I now knew that voice of not worth it. Not only was it not true, but it was the opposite, that I was so worth it, that he was afraid to show up less than. He was embarrassed that it wasn't good enough. So it kind of flipped that thing on me. And so I now carry a voice that knows how much I was loved, how important I was, and all of that. I urge people, figure out where your voice originated,
Yeah.
because there's some closure that could be in that for you.
Yeah. That's something I think to myself often, that voice in your head. Where's it coming from? Right? Why is it saying what it's saying? Where does it originating from? Because that is significant. I think a lot of folks hold themselves back just because they tell themselves a story that they don't know for sure is true. And I think what's worse is when you have an opportunity to figure out where is this voice coming from. It's like that conversation with your father. Imagine if you didn't have that conversation. Where would that
Mhm.
have put you? And don't get me wrong, I mean, that conversation, it went great for you, right? But that conversation could have very well gone a different direction. But I
Mhm.
still think no matter what, you need to confront that, even if the consequences are negative as an outcome. At least you provided yourself the ability to clear that up, right? And I think there's so much power to just, it takes courage to do that. It takes boldness to do that. And maybe you don't come out of that conversation with all the I guess the opposite messaging that you got, but at least you've been able to really tell that voice, this is where you come from. This is
Mhm.
why this is happening. And I think there's power in that. I don't, just in my personal experiences, when I have had those confrontations and maybe it wasn't kind of what I had hoped for,
Mhm.
but there was still relief in that I still did what I needed to do in order to figure out what was going on. It wasn't always
Yes.
the best outcome, but you know what? I still had the courage and the boldness and conviction to look into it, and there was still relief in that because it at least built my confidence to know that I had the ability to confront that which was holding me back.
Yes.
Again, you're not going to have the best outcome, but that skill is vital. And I think that's part of the, I listened to a podcast recently that this gentleman, he's a philosopher. He talked about what he's calling, the mental immune system, being able to hear that voice and ask the right questions. Like,
Mhm.
what is this? Where does this come from? Is it actually true?
Right.
Right.
And give it back.
Yep.
Your voice doesn't get to sit in my head if it's toxic. If your voice is a liability and not an asset, I get to evict you, because guess what? That was your truth. But what I'm going to do is step back and look at me and compare the me that I know to the voice that you're trying to give me. And if you do that, you'll realize, number one, I survived that craziness. Number two, I don't subscribe to that. So
Yeah.
take it and go. Thank you.
That's something about you, and maybe we dive into this next, is your ability to really put yourself in situations that serve you and it serves your interests, it serves your goals. That's something I learned from you early on, and even in the notes that you gave me. If it doesn't serve the peace and joy that you're searching for in your life, see you later. you know Obviously, I think for most individuals to get to that um, point where you are so hyper focused on what serves you, my guess is that you probably had to learn quite a bit about that which didn't serve you to understand what does serve you, right? And I think that's something I wanted to highlight with you, is you are so focused on what your goals are and what serves you. um, but again, you had to develop that skill set though. I think that's
Yes,
another thing. You're not born with that. You had to figure out what works for you. It's another one of those processes that you go through as takeaway, being a leader, just as a human, right? If you want to experience success in your life, whatever that is, you have to be able to figure out what serves that success and what does not. So what
absolutely.
I'd love to hear just your take on how did you become so good at only let life could run you or you run your life, and you do it by
Absolutely.
only approaching certain pieces. So how'd you get there?
So I have the benefit of extreme pain.
Yeah.
I have felt hurt, betrayal, and disappointment in periods of my life that were so devastating, I thought I was going to die. I'm talking about the boyfriend breakup that I ached in my joints. I could not wrap my mind around what went wrong and why it hurt so bad. Like levels of pain that would have made someone lose it, truly lose it. And I've had it happen more than once in my life. Again, that had to do with me chasing not being good enough. So I started law of attraction. I started attracting those who confirmed that I wasn't good enough. And so that showed up as someone who thought it was okay to physically abuse me. That showed up as someone who thought it was okay to have their way with me sexually, no matter how much I said no. It showed up as someone who didn't think being true or having fidelity in the relationship was real. Like all of those reaffirming you're not good enough, things I attracted and accepted, cast me into points of hurt that I never attempted to take my own life. But I know on more than one occasion, I thought, God, if you kill me, I know that would be better than what I'm feeling right now. That type of hurt, at some point you say, I'm not going to do this anymore. You get tired of it. And then once you get past getting tired of it, you start saying, what was similar about all that? Because it wasn't just dating, it was friendships. I had a couple of friends that weren't real friends. I mean, it was, I'm loaning people all my money and they don't pay me back. I moved a family into my home, a family that was living in their car, a mom and 2 kids. She opened up credit cards in my name while living in my house. Like I kept attracting it. And so I sat in my bed with bills, and I'm talking about all kind of bills because I'd taken loan out for a family member. I had loan, just weeping and sobbing and feeling so low and hurt. And then I just said, no more. I was in my early 20s and I said, no more. I don't want to do this anymore. This pain, not another day. Took me about 5 years to get out of all the debt I had created with those bad decisions. But I started to live again. I started to smile again. One day I woke up and I remember saying, I'm not hurting. Like I honestly stopped hurting one day. And I decided never again. And so I protect that. I protect that with everything. And it's non-negotiable. And I really don't care if you agree with it or not. Because that hurt you won't feel. Only I will. And so having agent of self, yeah, I'm leading this thing called my life. No, thank you.
Yeah. So it's beautiful. And it's a weird thing. I think about the same thing, right? The pain that I've experienced. That pain is not something to just shrug off. It's real. And you have a choice of what you want to do with it. You either can look at it again, it's like, either you can wallow it or you can do something about it. But there's something about pain that makes you understand, whether it's pain, mistakes, failures, anything that's just like that negative feeling in life. You have a chance to use it. You really do. And yes, you could be, you could adopt a mindset of I'm going to use this for growth, or you could just live in that victim mentality.
And that's it. I knew that I was not anybody's victim. I had to acknowledge, however, that I kept making decisions that said something to the contrary. So it was on me to make different decisions. because I hadn't forgotten who I was. But the decision said, you must not know who you are because you keep walking yourself into those situations. And so it was really about deciding different.
Yeah. You know, I want to get into something that I see you post it all the time. Live, love. This is your mantra. This is Denisha, and I'm sure a lot of what we talk about is what that statement is. But explain to the world what live, love is all about.
Absolutely. And it's funny because at the very moment in time this became my mantra, I was given the opportunity to really learn what it meant. So I decided, again, series of decisions, key decision points, milestones in my life. I had been working myself into an absolute stupor. I'm talking about workaholic, chasing the dream, but it was because I was chasing good enough. And I was missing periods of time. So, for example, there was no way for you to ask me, what did you do last Tuesday? I don't even know what today is, let alone what last Tuesday was. I was zombie sleepwalking through periods of time. I was missing entire 30 days of my life. I don't know. I woke up and went to bed and worked and woke up and went to bed and worked and woke up. That's what I was doing. A friend asked, because I wasn't eating regularly, I just had unhealthy habits altogether. Said, "Hey, when's the last time you ate something? like what is happening with you?" And I said, "Well, yeah, remember I had the turkey sandwich at the one meeting. That was the last meal, but I'm not really hungry." She looked at me and said, "That was 3 days ago." You have to know that you are on an unhealthy downward spiral when your body has now learned to survive 72 hours without you putting nourishment in it. That means that you have been binging and storing and binging and storing you have set, I had set up such an unhealthy system of living that it was killing me, to be honest. I was beyond overweight. It just unhealthy. My metabolism was afraid to burn anything off because who knows when she's going to feed us again. I mean, so you're doing this. The other thing is I looked at my life and I was making amazing money, right? Because you think that's it. If I make enough money to pay all my bills and then I can, and I was there, like that was that dream. Like if I could make enough money to not struggle and be afraid to open the mail again, because remember, I was in debt, then I'm going to be good. Financially, that was happening, but I was miserable. I did not have a joyful, I faked it really well, but inside, I wasn't happy. And so decision time comes. And I started crying one day and I think I cried for like 2 hours. And it was because I saw me. I literally saw me in a way I had not seen me for about 4.5 years. And I didn't like what I saw. And so I decided in that moment, two things. One, I was going to start living. Now, I was being, but it was almost like being in a hospital on a life support. Yeah, the blood's flowing, the oxygen's going, but that's not living. You're alive, but it's not living. So that was the other.
Or aware, really, right?
Not aware of a thing. And I was surviving my days. I would come home and pass out, and it would be an alarm that would wake me up. And I would drag myself to a shower and get dressed. And then showtime, I'm on. Horrible way of going. When I'm telling you, it was 5 years of that.
Yeah.
365 times 5, just zombie. And I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I made a promise to myself. First of all, I'm going to be present in my day. I'm going to know what the day is. I'm going to make some decisions about what's going to happen in that day. I am going to pause. Pause for the cause. I was the cause. I was going to pause. And sometimes pause is my song on Pandora that I am dancing to. I have a whole list that's called Joyful Tunes. And it's just songs that I hear that make me happy. Yeah. So I have that. But it was also experiencing the world differently. So I started walking. And when I would go for walks, the universe would talk to me. I'm talking about real messages like a stop sign. They're everywhere, right? But no, that stop sign would be like, what do you need to stop today? Whew, good question. I probably shouldn't have 2 pieces of cake. It was just tough. And I loved my life. I now woke up in the morning before the alarm. And I heard the birds. The birds had been chirping the whole time. Somehow I had not listened to the birds. And now that I do, they are so loud. Like, I don't know what's going on, but they're like extremely loud. Yeah. But all of those things I was missing. 5 years of my life gone, and I had nothing to show for it as far as joyful memories, as far as great times to pull from, a photo of, none of that. Can't do it again because I'm never going to get that time back. And again, when I'm protecting those leeches, those things that suck joy, that suck time, it's because that's what was happening during all of that. No, thank you.
Yeah, you just took ownership.
Absolutely. It's my life. Somebody's got to take ownership. Why not me?
Exactly, because no one else is going to do it for you, right? You're the one that's got to get yourself out of bed. You're the one that's got to get yourself ready for work, ready for whatever it is in your life. And it is so much better when you know what that is. Not yes. There's going to be times where you're going to go into an experience. Maybe it's something with work. It's a new project. You've never done it before. There's some uncomfortability in there, but you as an individual have developed yourself. It's kind of, again, like going back to like the strengths and weaknesses thing I was saying before. You know what you're good at, but you just have to develop that skill set to be able to assess and analyze and develop action steps and then execute, right? And be able to evaluate on the way. And you got to do that with your life. I realize, at least for me, when I'm doing that at a high level in my personal life, I'm a better father. I'm a better husband. I'm a better director at the Boys and Girls Club. I'm just a better person. And I will say too, the walking. I love walking. I swear that is something that everyone has their own medicine, so to speak. And walking is definitely that for me. I wake up every morning. Sometime, as long as I'm on the road, walking before 6 a.m. That's the goal, and for an hour, just to walk. And sometimes I'm listening to a podcast. Sometimes I'm just walking, just taking in the birds, and being able to take in the world. And there's something so significant about, pause for the cause, pause life, walk outside, look up in the sky. I think I was talking to one of my good buddies who runs a lot. I told him how, like, when I go for my walk, I realized I was just like looking down, barely just in front of me. And then all of a sudden I just pick my head up. I can see houses, I can see people. And then I started to just try to make it a point to every once in a while just look up, look up in the sky, take it in, because then you start to realize, when you're just looking down at your feet, it's just chaos. It's constantly moving. You're moving past things. You look up, and then you start to be more aware of, okay, my life is bigger than just my steps in front of me. There's other people, there's other opportunities. And then I don't know, you look up at the sky and you start to, there's this element of like, oh wow, I'm really small.
Perspective.
Exactly.
You get perspective. Yes.
And then there's just I don't know, I can't explain it. I'm sure there's some psychological verbiage that could explain that profound effect when you really just take it in.
Yes.
Take in the world around you, and you try to not control all of it. Like, you can control those steps in front of you, but you got to have the whole picture. And I think with nature, and this is kind of one of my selfish plugs for habits that I think is good for everyone, just get outside, look up into the sky, and understand that your life is so much bigger and that your opportunities as a person, the sky is the limit. and you get
Yeah,
to decide what that's going to be.
absolutely. Having that perspective, oh my goodness, I'm excited over here. It does so much. A couple of things. One, you realize just the dynamic complexity of the world, of life, of how this all works together. And then that kind of takes some pressure off of me. I'm just going to be honest,
Yeah.
because all of this is happening without my permission, without me having to wake up and hit a button. It gives me peace, to be honest, because I know that there is something so much bigger than me, so much more powerful than me that is at play with all of this. And then I say, and I'm a part of the this that is happening. So now I know I'm not in it by myself. There is something much bigger than me that's working on this whole thing. And it's been working out okay.
Yeah.
The other thing, like you said it, the sky is the limit. When you're walking and you're thinking, I am in a universe between the ants that just scurried past me and the cloud, like, oh my goodness, that is space and opportunity for anything I want. I just gotta want it though. And so my walking time is my creative time. My juices are flowing, my energy is high, the possibilities of what's possible. I'm not hearing the noise of all the can'ts, because as I'm walking, I'm seeing cans. That's a new property they just built. Wow, her flowers really bloomed nicely. Look how big the puppy is. Oh, the baby's walking now. Like all of these did are popping up around me as I'm going on my walk. And they're affirming that it's all possible for me too.
Yeah. And I think there's something too when you see the community around you. That, as you said, when you look up, there's something, for me personally, I don't know what's at play in this universe, but there's something. But I also look up at that sky and I think to myself, there's 7 billion people in this world that are all looking up at the same sky. You start to realize that, you do have to lead yourself. You're the one that's got to look up at that sky to have that understanding. I think when you have that understanding, you can find other people that share that understanding. That's when change in the world, the perspective. I'm not alone in this thing. I'm alone in that I have to lead my own life. No one else is going to do it for me. But
Mhm,
when I really take on the world and I try to make some difference, some good difference in this world,
mhm,
I'm going to find those people that share that same perspective, that understand they're the ones that got to get themselves out of their bed. They're the ones that are looking up into that sky to understand that the world is so much bigger and greater and opportunity is aplenty. And I'm going to
mhm.
find those people and let's get to work. Let's make a difference here. And I think that's
Absolutely.
another thing that you have beyond Excel, because you are a change agent. You are that strategic leader that has been, you've been all over the country to create change. Um, and I think that'd be unique to hear about your perspective and experiences in, collaboration and working with others, and what makes you so darn good at it, and how, what makes that click.
Um, I thank you for that. I am very empathetic. So not only do I love people and want people to be great, I also feel energy. I feel people's emotions, whether it's in business and you call it emotional intelligence, or in psychology you call it empathy. I'm an empath for sure, or even if you call it discernment in spiritual life. Uh, all of that describes my innate connection to people around me. So I'm able to walk into spaces caring off the bat. Off the bat, I care. And it's never about me. I am showing up as a servant. I've got my tool belt on. What do I need to do? And so I've had the privilege of working with leaders, because also that is very much my assignment. It is to work alongside leaders. We all have our space of where we should sit. Mine is somebody's up to something big and they need a thought partner a peer, a friend. I'm drawn to them. I'm absolutely drawn to them. So early on, when I said I'm an amazing number two, I didn't realize how true that was. that it is my assignment in the earth. There are some who are there to create leaders, to groom them. I can do that, but my assignment is to go to that space which is so lonely, but so critical. And it is that seat of leadership. Because when you're in leadership, very often you don't have a peer. You have those who are above you, you have those who are following you. You don't have a person that's sitting on your level. That's my place. I come in, I lead leaders. I do. I work alongside of them. And it's interesting because what happens is I'll work with someone and they tell somebody else. And that's where the next phone call comes. Hey, I heard so-and-so told me about you. And it has been happening. 2017, I began my first official consulting contract as an independent contractor. The phone calls have not stopped since 2017, like just one after the other. And it is such a blessing because it's what I wake up for every day. So it's like having this case full of tools, and I'm the tool and they're going, pick me, pick me. I'm the hammer hoping there's a bunch of nails that need to get hammered in. Like it is so fulfilling. But it started with me first being in the leadership seat. And all of that was training ground. I now recognize training ground so that I could sit next to a leader and totally understand where they are. Because whereas I started off leading a team of, professionally leading a team of 4 or 5 people, by the time I left to become a consultant, I was leading vice presidents and they were leading teams. And we had, at our high point, 900 employees under us. Like that's the scale and scope. And so, for example, now I'm working on a project where it's a community-based project, but the ecosystem is almost 40 different nonprofits, well over 8,000 people, 130 city blocks. Like that's it. That is my space. That is my happy place. I want to help all of them. Every single one of them show up awesome.
I'm curious because I think when I do the intro, I'm going to talk about probably some of your professional experiences to, really highlight honestly how much you've achieved in your life so far. I'm curious though, knowing a few of them already, but for the sake of like the listener, I want to give you some time like to brag about like what are some of your most prized accomplishments that you've experienced and had in your life, and not just it doesn't have to just be the work, it can be the personal too, but what are those things that you are most proud of that you've accomplished in your life?
Yeah. What's funny is the things that I am most proud of have to do with other people arriving, showing up as their best self. So I think of one person. Her name is Lakita Caldwell. Lakita is an amazing professional that I met when she was at the beginning of her leadership journey. She knew she led things, but she didn't know she was a leader. Those were very different for her. She used to always say, I want a seat at the table, but I don't want to be in charge of the table. But she had everything in her to own the table. And so I began to mentor her. Well, it was kind of like the John Miller conversation. She came to me one day and said, you know what? You're going to be my friend. Now, I'm going to be honest, it was kind of weird. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But she says she saw something in me that made her want to know how to be different.
Yeah.
So I have stretched, dragged, pulled, and threatened her into various assignments through her professional career. And it was really about exposing her to broader and broader opportunities where she wasn't in charge per se, but she showed up as a critical component of the success because I knew as her mentor to put her totally in charge would freak her out. So I didn't want to do that. But I knew she was such a team player that she would go for it. She would learn everything she needed to learn. She would come forth with excellence. She would innovate and she would do what needed to be done for the team to win. And then later I kind of show her how she was sort of in charge, but I didn't want to tell her that. And she kept falling for it over and over and over again. It was just amazing. So now you fast forward, she's in a role for a system that recruited her in. They saw her innovation. They saw her zest for life. They created an entire department because they saw that department is taking them somewhere, and they went and got her to lead this department that they had just created. She's in that role. And when I tell you she is making amazing happen, and it's not even hard for her. I knew that would be her day someday.
Yeah.
I just needed her to see it. And now she sees it. That's why I'm here. Because she's impacting thousands of people. And I knew she could.
Yeah.
I just had to get her there. And so it's about me getting people there. I have one other person who felt that they were great in the background. I'm a background person, I'm behind the scenes, and I didn't understand that concept. I'm like, you have way too much everything, brilliance, to be in the background. We need that brilliance out front so that others can follow you. Uncomfortable, totally uncomfortable. So at a period of her career, I actually was her supervisor. And so I put in her performance plan that she had to lead efforts. And I gave her, she had to own two, pick the two. But I also told her, if you don't, do know that in these two areas of your performance plan, I'm going to rate you accordingly. So now she's feeling this urgency because she has never had a bad performance review. So now she has to do it. And I'll be honest, one of those assignments she did with tears. And I'm like, she'll be all right. She's fine. Now you fast forward. She leads the DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives for a major billion-dollar foundation. That was always in her. She couldn't have gotten it from the back, though. You don't put your light under a bushel. We need you to be the city on the hill. Go. And so that, for me, that's my legacy. I know and want to know that when I take my final breath, that there are people who are doing amazing things that they have been gifted and assigned in this earth to do, and that somehow I made it easier for them to show up as that person that they were always meant to be.
I'm like speechless because my first thought is that's just beautiful because we need, God, I wish there was more people like you. And I know there are, but we need more. We need more people. I think if everyone can have an opportunity to have someone like you, and I think that goes, I wrote it down a while ago, but this idea of mentoring and getting feedback from people that really are in it, right? You can get feedback from anyone, doesn't mean it's going to be of value. So you want to make sure you go to the right people. But getting that mentor is so crucial. And have mentors that have the perspective that you have. Because you can ask anyone for feedback again, but you want to make sure you're asking the right people. And I think what you're doing in the work you've done, the work that you're doing, the work you're going to do, there's no question in my mind you're going to continue to change this world in ways that is critical and necessary. The work that you're doing here in Milwaukee, the communities that you're trying to impact and affect in positive ways, it doesn't happen without people like you. But you're doing what you're doing because of people that provide you the support and the environment and the ability to be curious, whether it be your mom or John Miller or all these different experiences you had in your childhood and in your professional career. And you did it so with a mindset of being aware. And you did go through that phase, like you mentioned, like this 5-year period of basically like autopilot zombie mode. But you still had some level of awareness, and you had the right people around you to be able to be like, hey, that turkey sandwich was 3 days ago. Denisha, what are you doing? But you always made sure that you surrounded yourself in a way and built yourself up in a way that you were always able to continue moving forward. So I think that's one of the most important things for a lot of people. It's just when you stop, that's I've always told, whether it be people that have just sought my advice or people I work with and manage and supervise, I don't care if you have to crawl, as long as you're moving forward. It might be painful, it might hurt, but you know what? It's the moment you stop, that's when, I've been at those points in my life where I did want to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And I never want to go back to that. And I see that with so many folks where it's just like they're stopped. Yeah. And I just want to jumpstart them again and be like, let's move forward. But it's folks like you that help to continue pushing that forward. Because to some people, that stop is to no fault of their own. It's the context that they grew up in. It's the policies. It's the environment, the economy, whatever. There's a lot of folks that I think are stopped to no fault of their own. But there does come a point that once I've lived by this quote, or I try to live by this quote as much as I can. If you know better, do better.
Yes.
Right? Once you may have all the reasons in your mind, that comes back like that victim mentality of, you have all the reasons to say, I am no good. I can't do this. Everyone's got those. But you know what? That's not you saying it. That's a voice of taking in experiences and translating into what honestly it's garbage, and you can believe it, but do something about it. Let's make it happen. You can wallow in woe is me and the world is unfair. Well, yeah, right, for sure.
It is. Now what?
You can at least make your life fair on your own terms.
Absolutely.
What you can for others. Well,
yeah. And people, we have to understand the law of attraction. Yeah. This is where your power really does come into play. You attract and receive what you believe. So if you're walking around emitting this, I am less than, woe is me, life is horrible, it's always going to be bad, guess what? You're right. Yep. If that same person is walking around like, tomorrow's going to be better, I think I can do it, I'm going to try, I had one success today, guess what? They're right. You attract, absolutely. The universe aligns with whatever truth you want. So control that, control it. And what it doesn't mean that bad things, unfortunate things won't come your way. I'm not saying that. But when I tell you, you can have such a perspective that even when the unthinkable is happening, you're like, I don't know how this is going to work out, but I know it's going to work out good. I don't know why it's happening, but I know I'm going to survive it. I don't know. I'm telling you what I've experienced. I went to the emergency room with a headache because I had a migraine that would not let me go. I had a migraine. It lasted 7 days and then it ended. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this was ridiculous. Almost 30 days later, it was back. And for 7 days, I'm like, I just got to survive 7 days. Don't know what that's about. I could do it. The 8th day I woke up with them, the migraine was still there. Okay, gotta go to the emergency room. Went to the emergency room. After them treating me for an hour with all sort of painkillers, it had not stopped. They said, we need to do a scan. Because, we believe you that you're still hurting, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? I'm like 15. This is not working. They say, let's do a scan. Let's figure it out. The doctor came back in the emergency room. He said, the neurosurgeon is on its way. For a migraine? Like, what are you talking about? You don't have a migraine. You have what's called a subdural hematoma. What does that even mean? What means your brain's bleeding? And you have two different places where it's happening. We've got to do emergency surgery. So here's the thing. As this tear is rolling down my eye and my life is flashing before my face, I say, and it is true, it's this perspective. How blessed am I? Because 2 tears, that means that first 7 days of migraine was the initial tear. My brain's been bleeding for 30 days. I have been going to bed, getting up, going through my day for 30 days, and my brain is bleeding. And I'm still here. It's perspective. I still had to have brain surgery. I ended up bald and 21 staples in my head. Yes, I did. But I was so grateful to be alive because it didn't have to be that way. And I was so grateful for the 8th day of hurt because that made me go to the emergency room and see what was wrong because the 9th day wasn't promised. So get the perspective of finding the positive in it, and your life will be so much better, even when all hell is breaking loose. It will.
You gotta find. I got one staff in particular, so if she listens to this, she'll know who I'm talking about her. What are you grateful for today? I ask every day I wake up, what are you grateful for? When things are going wrong, what am I grateful for? Because life is chaos. It just is. And you have, again, it comes down to that point of choice as an individual. Either you can choose to kind of feed off the chaos or feed off that which is beneficial to your life, that serves your life, that you're grateful for in your life. And how you approach everything, how you approach waking up in the morning, how you approach getting yourself ready for the day, how you talk to people, how you do your work, that perspective will completely shift whether you are, that spectrum of the ultimate success to the worst of failures. That perspective will drive where you land on that line. Um, and so it's so critical. I mean, think about that. I mean, again, another example of like, woe is me, victim mentality. You could have just gone down a really dark place with that whole deal. And it could have impacted you. You could have had the surgery and then you could have been just negatively impacted for months, years. But that's not the case because you saw the other side. You saw that positive perspective of thank God you had that 8th day of pain. Thank God that you made the decision and took control to take care of yourself. Because if you don't do that, I mean, shoot, this podcast isn't happening possibly today, right?
Right, absolutely. No, it wouldn't have.
So it's amazing when you really listen to yourself and you really take control of yourself and you ask the right questions, right? You could have easily been on day 8, like, okay, maybe it's just going another day longer this time around, but you chose to do something about it, and
Right.
that's key. It's again, and you were crawling, right? You were in pain, you were crawling, but you still were moving. You
That's
didn't
it.
just say, you know what, another day of it, so be it, because that could have completely stopped you.
Yeah, it could have been the last day. And it's when you talk about moving forward, keep moving, it's one decision at a time. It's one intentional act at a time. And maybe you don't know the 27 steps it's going to take, but what's the one? What's the one step you could take right now? Yeah, we're not talking about all those things that are not within your control. What's the one step you can take because it is within your control? It is within your authority. It is within what you can make happen right now. Don't worry about the rest later. Just that one. Go for it.
Yeah. So I want to ask you a couple questions that kind of relate to Denisha and what it is you do to tick, right? For me, it's that wake up, it's that walk, it's the journaling, it's all these practical steps, right? All these different protocols that I put into my life. You know, I always like to ask my guests, what are yours? Like, what are your habits? What are your routines? What are you reading? Who are you listening to? I could ask a million different ways, but those, I think most successful people I've met, there is some type of consistency in behavior that allows them to put themselves in that mental state that allows them to be successful. So what is that for you?
Yeah. Um, One, it's music. I love music, just rhythms and sounds, and it's like popping popcorn. Something happens inside of me. And so every morning you're gonna hear music. You're it is me getting dressed, it's me bopping around, it's me preparing for my day. And it works both ways. If there's something that was hanging on from the day before, there's a song that's going to wash that away. If it's something I'm concerned about, there's a song that's going to wash that away. And there's always several songs that are going to say, let's do it. So that starts it, and that stirs up my spirit inside. I'm like, yes, that happens. Um, I am very careful about what I take in as far as television, radio, social media, all of that. My husband knows I'm very sensitive. And so, for example, he is a history buff. And so he'll watch all these war movies because he's a genius around history and how things happen. I, on the other hand, I can't, it's painful, that death and trauma and so he'll be in the living room watching television. And if, I want to come and watch TV with him, he'll be like, oh, okay. He'll stop the TV and say, what do you want to watch? Because he knows that it's probably going to be a cartoon. I am very aware of my sensitivities. Again, high empath, that's just me. So I guard those sort of things. The other is when I read, I'm reading for purpose. I'm not usually reading for entertainment. I'm trying to refill my cup.
Yeah.
It's something that I want to. So for example, right now, just have it on near my desk. The energy bus. Look, can you see it? There it goes. Yeah, the energy bus. Now, not the first time I've read it, but this book is so amazing. And so it's just understanding how to infuse your life with positive energy. And it forces you to perspective, look at perspective and understand what may be taking that positivity away. For me, this was necessary, not because of the pandemic and me, because to be honest, this has been an amazing year and a half for me. I mean, really good.
Yeah.
Not ignoring all the tragedy and all the horrible things that happened. I even lost loved ones. But this has been an amazing, to see people take care of each other, to see the creativity, the innovation pop. Like, it has been beautiful for me to watch and experience, even though there have been some horrible things happening simultaneously. But I needed to read the energy bus again because I want to help people find their joy again, find their positivity. So when I'm reading for purpose. I really am. And then the last thing, my spiritual life is such a keen part of who I am. I understand that there is a spirit in me that connects to the spirit in the squirrel, that connects to the spirit of the air. Like, I get all of that. And I get that there is a higher power that has a plan for my life, that loves me, that wants things to work out for the good of me, even the bad things, craziness, work out for the good. I am very much engaged in weekly reinforcement of all of that, whether it's through reading the Bible, going to church, being at Bible study, or just talking to others who believe like I believe. You know, that is such a key part of my refilling my cup.
Yeah.
So my habits are all about keeping the cup full.
Yeah. It's about serving you. It goes back to that idea. You're not going to do things that don't serve you. Those, the things that don't serve your goals. I go back to like the peace and joy piece that you put in your notes. Like that's your success, right? It's not necessarily, accomplishing this project. It's not about, maybe even not even developing that leader like you were talking about before, but it's about at the end of the day, does Denisha have peace and joy in her heart and in her mind? And that is success. And I think that's one of the points of this podcast for me is to teach people. It's not about the money.
No.
It's not about the accolades, because you could have all that. And you talked about it before. You could have all these things, but you could be like, well, that's you don't feel good about it. You don't
Right.
feel good about yourself. So
Right.
if you're getting all these and you don't feel good about yourself, because again, like you're the one, when you wake up, it's you. Even when you're with your husband or
Yes.
you're with your grandkids, it's still you, and you want to feel a certain way in all these different experiences.
Yes.
But you're not going to be able to have that unless you work for it and you make the choice to want that and to only do the things that serve that desire.
Yes.
There's God, I'm going to blank the name, but I was listening to another podcast recently, and he talked about, a lot of people have a lot of desires.
Hmm.
Pick one. Pick one that is so central to all the others
Yes.
that that one desire fits the other desires, right? And I share the same idea with kind of myself. Is my goal is peace,
Yes.
and I'm going to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do to have peace.
Yes.
And knowing full well, like you mentioned it before, and I'll put it kind of in how when I talk to other folks, um, sometimes to have peace, you have to go to war. You still have to be
Yeah.
prepared for the things that make you uncomfortable. You
Hmm.
still have to develop those skills that, when it's time to put on the boxing gloves for whatever situation might be, you got to be ready to fight, take a hit, deal with pain and sadness, and also be able to really be present in the joy and that the happiness and the celebrations, because it's
Yes.
all, at the end of the day, it's all temporary. But
Absolutely.
peace and joy are two elements where, again, like happiness, it's like a roller coaster. You're gonna ride that high, but eventually you're gonna come down. And same with the pain. You're gonna go low, but eventually you're gonna be able to come back up. And somewhere
Hmm.
in that middle, I always tell folks, it's like my goal is to be just above, that middle ground. I think that's where peace is, peace and joy, because it's not quite this high like happiness.
Right.
It's just this, it's a little bit above 50%, and it feels pretty darn good. And it's a much more stable place to live your life.
Absolutely. And that is my North Star.
Yeah.
Everything I do is striving for that. It is striving for more peace, more joy.
Yeah.
Anything that is leaving my life, it is because it is disrupting my peace or disrupting my joy. And I am not afraid of making the decisions of moving things around. Absolutely not. And I do so unapologetically.
Yep.
And that's where we sometimes can't have the fulfilling life that we want because we're too busy trying to please everybody else. And if you're pleasing everybody else, but at the end of the day, you're miserable, like why would that make sense? I want to get good, get right. I'm going to put my mask on first, and then I got you. And that's the way that I live life. Absolutely.
Sure. Well, speaking of living life, obviously you got some steps ahead. I know you mentioned to me some pretty exciting things that are coming up in your life. So what does that look like? You've done so much already, and you have peace and joy. Every time I talk to you, I just know you are just living life and loving life. So what's next? Where's Denisha going from here?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So a couple of things. One, consulting has been really amazing. And I'm going to keep going down that path, just expanding and looking forward to eventually expanding my team to teach others so that I can work with a list of leaders and projects and opportunities and help move them forward. So expansion is definitely something that I'm interested in. Um, Super excited. My husband and I have made the decision that we are buying a home in my happy place, Phoenix, Arizona, the greater Phoenix area. Um, I'm a desert girl. Oh my goodness. Talk about taking a walk. Take a walk down the street where there's mountains to the side, where there's lemon trees and the smell of citrus in the air. It's 90 degrees because I don't get hot. It's, I mean, heavenly, just absolutely heaven on earth. So that is a decision we've made that we are going to purchase there. I'll still be working all across the country. Milwaukee's not losing me, but to know, again, it's about choices, right? Knowing that that too will be home. I'm so looking forward to that. And then the last thing, so I don't know if we talked about this. So I wrote a book.
Oh yeah, yes. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
I had
no,
that in
no,
my
no.
notes. So yeah, make sure
So
we selfish plug. Make sure you
yeah, selfish
brag
plug.
about
Here we go.
this.
So, you know, and it's funny, I did not plan to be an author. Life happened and I had to tell people. And writing a book was so much easier than calling everybody. So, but what I have not done is I haven't really leveraged the book and the story and the power of helping others through it. And so that's one of the things that I want to do in the very near future. I have it in paperback. I have also recorded it for audibles.
Ooh, there you
And
go.
so I need to go ahead and release that. And so my book, have one with me, always keep one near. The title of my book is 1 Mile Below Bottom, Keeping Your Joy in Hell. True story. You know, I have had some pits of hell, horrible experiences. And even through those, my joy was intact. And that's a skill that you learn. And so it is to help others and, you know, talk about timeliness. After surviving the pandemic, I think it's just time to help people find their joy again and how to hold on to it, regardless of the depths of despair that you may have experienced. And so I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. I will definitely we'll link that book in the show notes. We'll promote that for you too. I definitely want to get myself a copy. I remember when that came out, and it's just about time. I just got to get it. Um, well, honestly, so I think I've covered just about everything, at least minimally. I want to cover. I was saying before we hit record that I think you and I could probably sit here and talk all day. If I just wrote out a
Absolutely.
list of I mean, we haven't even scratched the surface of the multitude of things we've talked about in person and in other conversations prior to this. Um, but for the sake of not keeping people on for hours and hours, we'll start to wrap this up. But I want to give you a moment, and you've done it throughout this whole thing, and I think the way you speak, um, there, you speak in a way where there's always an opportunity for people to listen. And there's no question, as we've talked about all the different topics in this interview, um, you've really spoken a lot for the listener to take in. But if you were just, I'm going to give you the floor and really just let the people hear what it is you really want them to hear and take away. Like if there was going to be maybe a few points you really want them to hear, what would you say to them?
Absolutely. The first is decide. It is time for you to decide the life you want, who you want to be, how you want to show up in the world, and then take action. You don't need a committee's approval. You don't need everybody to even understand. You just need to take action. And don't be afraid. You are enough. You are good enough. And everything you need to show up as you, it's already in there. You've just got to uncover it. So check all the pockets because you've got it. And just know that there's an urgency because the world needs you to show up because there's an assignment on your life. Just like there's assignment on my life, on Max's life, there is an assignment. And our assignments are to match and handle a pain point that is existing in the world. So if you won't do it for you, do it for the one who is waiting on you so that it could be better. And it may be because there's something you were supposed to invent, It may have been a business you were supposed to start. It may have been a phone call you were supposed to make or a cookie recipe you were supposed to release. I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, stop waiting. It's time. And now if you need permission, go for it. I've given you permission. Go for it. Show up as the best you possible because the world is waiting on you.
That's awesome. All right. Well, I don't want to do too much more because that's the perfect place to end it. So Denisha, thank you so much for coming on the show today, for recognizing me. It was back in 2019 when we first met.
Yes.
I'll never forget that experience. So just thank you for what you do, because you really are a bright light in this world, and the world could use a lot more Denishas, that's for sure. But in the meantime, I'm so excited for what the world's going to get from you in the years to come. And I look forward to watching it happen and bringing you back on later down the road to just talk more and more about what it is that makes you tick and what we can do to help others to find their catalyst. So
awesome.
so
And
thank
you
you.
keep going because you're amazing and you truly are a catalyst.
Thank you, Denisha. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Appreciate you all, and we'll see you guys next time.